Sixth Invitational Group Stage Day 2, Electric Boogaloo. And again, Group B did not disappoint. We had to open up the other group of Sixth Invitational with some other crazy heavy hot action, mostly North American teams in play today. And oh boy, there were some really standout things we want to talk about. Hi, I'm Jacob. He's Jesse. I pointed this way yesterday because I'm always used to pointing in this direction if you're like on the other side of the screen for the NAL, but now you're over here, and someone pointed that out on YouTube comments, and I went, fuck. But
come on, Jacob.
We're back here. We got Group B to talk about. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. Yeah, a little bit. Got to sleep in today. Didn't have to wake up until 5 or 6 a.m.
God. Mm-hmm.
So we're feeling better than we were yesterday, I'm not gonna lie. And yeah, shorter day. The games were still pretty good. Got to see a lot more of North America, so that's obviously something that I've been really interested in seeing and finding out how NA would fare. And it's okay. I don't know. Ups and downs today. Ups and downs.
I think most of what happened in NA is something we can call all right. Two teams were really solid. One of them was kind of in the middle, and then the other one was Parabellum. So we'll hammer out all the details about everybody as the group goes on. But if we want to look at the standings real quick, there is obviously a difference from how we did it from yesterday. Virtus Pro and Wildcard are the two we probably have to talk about right out of the gate. Obviously, not being here means that we were going to have some shakeups. And VP especially was a team I think was probably going to make some noise and probably top 4 contention based on their performance in the EUL. I figured they would be very high up there, but the fact that they're not here means another team is probably going to step up in their place. And so as follows, the only team that is undefeated, but only by nature of playing 2 games as opposed to 3 so far is NIP.
Yep, NIP topped the leaderboard today. I don't know that necessarily means that they're that they played the best or that they are the best, but they managed to get some 2 big wins, and so they definitely can hold their head high after today. They did play Parabellum and they played Mkers and they played Giants. So I think it'll get a little bit harder for them as things go on, but still, they played very well. Mkers, actually, you put them in the 2nd place. Fair enough. I guess they went 2-1, and the only team who managed to get a scoreline like that were TSM. And, well, you give it to the tiebreak. Mkers are on top.
So at this point, I'm only a little bit afraid, solely because Mkers were just a massive mystery that we didn't have any expectations for if they were going to be good or if they were going to be riding their momentum from that EU Sixth Invitational qualifier from a couple of months ago. And it seems like they've been riding the momentum, but in the same way as NIP kind of had some easy opponents, Mkers also did have a Parabellum win as the day went on. The most impressive one was against TSM, but Mkers still beat 2 North American teams to get to that point. So that's already pretty insane. The rest of North America, TSM 2-1, pretty damn good. Space Station 1-1, same with OXG. So the North American League teams didn't play a whole bunch of games today, but what they did was 500 at the very least. So none of them come into the day with a losing record like Dark Zero did yesterday because they were 1-2. So all of them are still, mid-ground at best for the moment. Space Station's win was one of the 2 shutouts on the day. OXG had the other one, and it was against the other NA team, which is Parabellum, and they are tied with Giants for dead last all the way at the bottom, but Giants do have one more round 1. So they will stay above them in 7th place as opposed to dead last.
It's crazy what happens when you don't get 7-0'd. You do tend to collect those rounds, and
I guess
Giants
so.
Sure did that. So... Wait, the Giants didn't also get 7-0, did they?
They did.
No.
SSGM Club.
Oh, man. Well, that point's not doesn't make sense then. Okay, yeah. Sucks to suck. All right.
That game was still really good, and I saw, my God, Canadian, he popped off. He did amazing. Here are his stats, MVP performance stats. Bro, you played Giants on your most preferred map ever and didn't lose a round. That's not MVP. Do that against NIP. Do that against Mkers, for fuck's sake, at this point. But that doesn't qualify when you're playing the sole APAC team in your group. We'll get to all of that once that game shows up. But still, I thought that was funny when I saw it on Twitter.
I mean, somebody's got to get MVP, right, Jacob?
It's true.
It's got to be someone.
It's true. Mm-hmm.
It's glad to see Troy's back, right? Especially, he's been playing a lot of other games. I'm sure, Slay the Spire, I heard, has been in his Steam library, maybe a bit more than Siege.
He's been playing more Valorant than he's been playing Siege recently, I want to bet. So
listen, that's what everybody says.
If it works, it works, dude.
Yeah, dude. Maybe that's what all pros should start doing. I'm joking. Don't do that, please.
I'm taking the note down. A lot more Slay the Spire. Yeah, no, Troy had a good performance. Even against TSM, it was pretty darn solid. But TSM versus SSG is another map that when we get to it is something that SSG will probably need to want to look at because TSM had a pretty good streak going in their own right. But we do have an overall shorter day. For those of you who noticed, obviously we had games starting 4 hours later this time around because the idea is not that play days will start at the same time. The idea is that the games will end around the same time. Group B having 2 less teams, and it means that we then got to start 4 hours later. So for Jesse and myself, games started at 7 a.m. rather than 3 in the morning, which was massively preferred, but it means we will still be going to bed tonight, probably around 9 or 10, trying to get like 5 to 6 hours before we got to get back up and watch the games for tomorrow. But in this case, it was nice to get a little bit more of a respite. And there were only 4 games on the B stream, 5 games on the A stream. And like yesterday, I took A, Jesse took B. We're going to switch things up so that we get B and A mixed around, I think, for the next 2 days. Like, I know I was going to take B for tomorrow, but if you wanted to do it for other times past that, then we can get that sorted later. So I'll go ahead and start because, again, we went with A stream first. We'll head to B. So we began with Giants versus NIP. So Latin America versus APAC matchups are always pretty interesting to go through. And by the way, for those who don't know, Giants literally rebranded themselves and gave themselves a new logo and like text face and everything while SI was going on. Like, the old shield is gone, the new shield is in. And the first thought I had was, did you give them new jerseys? Like, can they wear jerseys with the updated logo at SI? And my guess is no. But if you're confused about what that shield is, that is still Giants. It still has the Vodafone logo because that's their primary sponsor. And I'm like, that is the most whack timing when you have a team literally at a world championship. But overall, I thought that was weird. What do you think of the rebrand?
It's fine, I think. I'm trying to like compare the 2 logos. Yeah, I like it a lot better, actually. Now that I'm looking, the old logo kind of sucked. Let's be real. I don't like words and logos. I think it's way cleaner now. They've got just like this cool little design thing. It's like a
I can agree with that. Unless the word is the logo, like MIBR, then I'm usually kind of turned off to it because I think MIBR does it okay. But
yeah, it's all right. Yeah, whatever. I think that it's a little confusing, perhaps, for some of the viewers, so it's definitely important to mention. You know, they're like, who is that team? That, like, I literally thought, who is that team when we opened this graphic? Because we didn't watch the squad on the B stream, but yeah, it's Giants.
Gotcha. So this was the first coastline that we saw of the Invitational. We had 2 coastlines today. We saw none of it at all yesterday, and it was NIP ultimately taking the dub. It was 7-4. This one was kind of close, believe it or not. I think Giants showed some really good adaptability. They were going toe to toe. It was 4-4 for the first 8 rounds. It was a really good stretch. NIP, I think, did take a little bit to get going. They had a big stretch, but then Giants suddenly come out of the woodwork with a couple of things of their own. A lot of very good decision making to flush out some of the aggressive nature that NIP show. It's also coastline, so that just kind of makes sense for the map. And then we had a massive rehost. So at round 8, we rehost, and everything kind of has to get like reset and set back to scratch. Pino then goes ballistic. He goes 10-1 over the next 3 rounds. Giants don't win another round since then, and he caps off round 9 as soon as the rehost ends with an ace. And I actually do have the clip pulled up for him if we wanted to look at it real fast. He's sitting in kitchen like everyone on Giants. Sorry for the quality's a little whack because Twitter for some reason didn't want to give me the HD version, but he's sitting inside kitchen, and credit where credit is due, Giants are very determined to get this refrag. Like, Muzi is dead, Pino wants the kill, and the webcam on him is wrong. It's not showing Pino in the webcam frame, but just take a look at this.
Yeah, I remember watching. Jeez. So
swings 1, 2. There's a swing again. You don't have to come back to the doorway, but he still does. It's the one by long bar, and then it falls apart because they desperately want this kill.
Yeah, this is like depressing. I feel like I remember coming back into this game, and like right about in the middle of this clutch, we came and watched this match because our first game had ended because ours was a 7-0. So we came back into the middle of this ace, and I think there's something to be said about players that refragging is good, right? You always want to refrag, but like there definitely are times where refragging is not possible, and you need to recognize that and just accept it that you lost like the kill. I do think that like that second maybe initially that wasn't the case, right? I think that very second player who died probably should have gotten that refrag and it was fine to peek it, but man, Pino, at some point somebody probably should have stopped peeking the doorway. That's all I gotta say about that.
Agreed. Yeah, for NIP it seemed pretty damn stock standard, but for Giants, that good decision making that they had evaporated and went out the window post rehost, and Pino was lights out the rest of the way. He was nading onto Hookah in the very last round and just looked stellar. And if we pull the stats back up again real quick, I want to say he should have topped the stats overall. I think he had like a 1.6 when I checked him from before. No, 1.7, even better.
Okay.
16 and 7. It's crazy to think that on round 8 he had 6 kills. He was 6 and 6, and then just he turns into the Hulk and smashes the entire lobby.
Hey man, sometimes that's all it takes, and I think that's one that I'm gonna have to go back and watch because it's coastline between two like really frag heavy teams. Maybe Giants aren't frag heavy, but like really frag heavy NIP, and then Hysterix is a player that I would expect to do really well and be very fun to watch there. Kind of surprised he's only going 11 and 10, 1.02. He is like kind of the player from Giants as far as I'm aware. So a little bit shocking to me that he's going so low here. I guess he still has like the most kills on his team. Like it still looks pretty good. But like when you watch Giants, usually Hysterix is the one that needs to be dropping like 15, 16 kills for this team to find success. And the fact that he's not showing up, I think probably is a big reason why this team ended up losing out. But, I can only theorize.
Yeah, the matchup on paper, like you mentioned, of Giants NIP and it being coastline just sounds really good. I think for rewatchability, this one definitely has a lot of it. But that is going to start a trend or continue a trend of APAC teams not getting any region wins unless it's against their own region, because there isn't an APAC team alongside Giants in Group B, because there are only 3 of them going this year. So, the downward spiral continues for Asia, and I kind of feel bad.
Yeah, to touch on this a little bit, I guess there was somebody in my Discord who said in our esports discussions, they said APAC, have the ability to play well, but they just aren't. They just aren't showing up in this tournament, and I kind of don't agree. I think that APAC don't have the ability to play well right now because we weren't seeing it in the regular season. We're not seeing it now here at SI. I just don't think APAC as a region is strong enough right now. I think an entire year of no international competitions has pushed APAC in the wrong direction. I think if we have Lance back this year, if that happens, I have no idea if it will.
You said they regressed yesterday, like by a year because of COVID, yeah?
Yeah, I think we get a full year of APAC having international competitions. They'll be back next year. They've got a good chance. This year's a write-off for APAC as far as I'm concerned. The regional leagues just don't look strong enough at all. They're relatively large. You have to play pretty poor opponents, and most of them, the level of competition that they get just isn't really valid, or isn't like, I don't know. It's not conclusive to actual improvement, in my opinion. So
I can buy that.
I'm not super impressed with APAC. I don't think that we're going to see anything too crazy from them. I'm hopeful. I absolutely am hopeful. But I think probably next year is when APAC will finally step up and get another team deep into the bracket.
I think it would have been a different story if Wildcard were here, because I think if anyone was going to show something that would have been more improvement, or like we would have had more confidence in them doing something or like adapting as the tournament goes on, I think it would have been like an Australian team, simply by nature of how that region plays comparative to the rest of Asia. And it is a little different now because you've got Australia being mixed in APAC South with some of those other South Asian teams. So maybe it wouldn't have been the greatest change in the world. But again, because we would have seen a different APAC play style, and I think there are similarities between Giants, CAG, and Cloud9 that you can kind of all lump them in together because they all used to be in APAC North. It just, there isn't enough of a style delineation, and it still kind of seems like Asia will, or APAC as a whole for this SI will kind of keep on falling by the wayside, like it or not.
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, that's Wildcard with Diesel, to be clear. I think that would be a very good team. Without Diesel, probably not. And yeah, I think Australia probably has one of the better understandings of the game. I do think Southeast Asia's, select teams in there have really strong understandings of the game as well. I think Japan has a lot of potential. So we'll see. I like Korea a lot. Korea's really fun, but I'm a little bit worried about how they'll do in future years. We'll see. That's all theoretical.
Yeah, we do like watching other regions grow up and adapt in some way. And speaking of that, the old Canadian division. This hurts me. But tell me how much it hurts your maple syrup covered soul.
Yeah, this one was tough to watch. Parabellum played really bad. They played really, really bad. That's all there is to say about this one. They started on defense on Oregon. You can see they got 0 rounds in those first 6. For the most defender-sided map, that's pretty tough. They just swung everything. Like, they played so aggro. They'd be in man disadvantage and they'd start swinging to try to get it back and they'd lose. They'd be an even man count and they'd start swinging to be unpredictable and they'd lose. They'd have like a 5-3 advantage and they'd swing and they'd lose it. And it's like, okay, you could have just chilled. You're on defense with a 5-3 man advantage. You don't have to swing white stairs 3 times and lose them all. And that's what happened a couple of times here. And I think it got better, right? Rounds 5 and 6, they played more passive. Those first 4 rounds were absolute throws. They didn't really have a chance at them as long as Oxygen were playing relatively solid, and they were. Rounds 5 and 6, we got to see a little bit more, pushing come out from Oxygen, but really it was one where OXG, I think, had shaken them mentally, and by that point, it was kind of already done with. You can see the stats on your screen, like 3-7, 4-7, 2-7, 3-7, 2-7. Like, these are not
all in the red, and it's almost all like a 0.5 and below. Like, even before you round down, that's still shit.
Yeah, it's just nobody was shooting back on Parabellum. Nobody was having a good time. And for Oxygen's sake, like, I really would love to tell you that Oxygen, they were playing great. They had all these amazing things. Oxygen just didn't really get an opportunity to look good because, like, they played pretty standard. Like, they held angles and Parabellum swung into them and Oxygen shot when somebody gave them a free kill. They pressed mouse 1. So everybody on Oxygen played good. They didn't really have the opportunity to play bad, is how I would describe
that's
it.
True. Yeah.
I really don't like this match. Doesn't really say anything about Oxygen in my mind. It's all Parabellum struggling in the beginning here. I will say they had kind of a creative hold of dorms. They kind of extended into Armory whilst opening up like the closet to master bedroom. Was kind of cool. Totally ignored by Oxygen. They just decided, screw it, we're gonna push big window. We wanted to push big window anyways. Let's just go do that, and it was ignored. So.
Is it the kind of thing that you could see Reaper making this would have been cool if it worked kind of video, but
yeah, maybe
not. If it's that cool, I suppose that would be something that you could focus on later. Here's a question I did have though. And I think Penguin after the game tweeted saying something about we needed to get acclimated to the LAN build. It's more specifically. Now, granted, none of these guys have any international LAN experience. It's their first time at a major minor, like anything aside from where they've played in their own homes before. Is saying that we aren't used to the LAN build a valid excuse? OXG are obviously very accustomed to it because they play in the NAL. It's in Vegas. These guys haven't. So having one game and trying to see if they can't get used to it, does that excuse poor decision making?
I mean, no, I think that LAN build probably, like, from what I've heard, LAN build, the big difference is sort of, it's mechanical, right? That's the biggest deal. There might be some mental issues there, like, you're in France playing for the first time in such a high level competition. I think that's probably a better explanation as to why they played the way they did. Peeking ahead a little bit, I won't get too into it, but I did think that they improved for Mkers. So I do think like a lot of it was just like they weren't really in the right mind space. I think that probably they didn't make the right decisions because of the situation. So yeah, like whether they shot back or not, like they just took way too many disadvantaged fights, and Oxygen were just ready for them. So it wasn't an aim thing in my mind. If they had ridiculous aim, they could have probably forced the strategy to work, but you'd have to have better aim than any other team in this tournament to make those rounds turn into wins for Parabellum. At least all of those rounds.
Yeah, I think that's kind of like the general sentiment as well, was always Parabellum being a brand new squad that doesn't have experience like this before. They will need time to settle in and to adapt and see what like test the water out a little bit. I think pressure also for them, I don't want to say it's non-existent, but it's not nearly as high as the guys who are in the NAL who have the expectations on them to do well. Like almost no one, if they're not smoking crack, are going to pick Parabellum to place very low, if not even make it out of groups. I didn't have them coming out of groups. So they don't have a lot of pressure on them by comparison to these other teams. So they don't have to do as well. They can do other things. But hey, if it takes one game to kind of get into the swing of things, then I guess it takes one game. Yeah, so
I think that's fair.
It is what it is. All right. Their own North American brethren, TSM, came to play by comparison against MIBR. We had, I think, our worst game yesterday was a 7-2, and then we had a 7-2 here. MIBR just played too aggressive, and TSM punished them for it the whole day. Here's the thing about this. Look at that graphic. And understand, MIBR did not ban an attacking operator. They did.
Yeah.
While mine was the only thing they banned, like, I want to say, I'm trying to remember who tweeted this earlier. Someone mentioned MIBR are pulling out the really weird unranked ban phase for some damn reason. I don't know if it was because they didn't have time or they just weren't paying attention to ban phase and they just kind of let it slip. But
maybe
there is no attacker ban on the board for MIBR, and I do not think that had anything to do with strategy, because at the end of the day, they lost, and they lost big time. It's not like, oh, we won't ban an op on attack, that way we can keep our options open and maybe have more flexible operator lineups. No, there was nothing, which meant every single hard breacher was on there. Maverick was up there. We obviously saw Merc play it most often than any other op, and TSM just went to work. So this was also TSM's permaban. They didn't play it at all over the course of the past 3 months or so. Played it not at all during the NAL. MIBR also did not favor this map very much either. So on paper, I kind of thought TSM could probably exploit more things with MIBR because there's recent history for them. But TSM didn't have any tape in the past 3 months in this new meta for MIBR to be able to work with. So that did give them an advantage, I think. TSM also ran a whole bunch of fragging ops. They had a double hard breach set the whole time. It was, I believe it was Thermite and it was Maverick. And the other ops you see, Ash, Zoth, and Sledge, all of them were still going to work, where MIBR was getting aggressive and trying to roam, especially on their defensive half. They were getting smoked. They had one player who was trying to go long, go deep, another guy who was trying to back him up, and both of them get taken out. No refrag potential, and it allows TSM to do what they do best and just kind of swarm and constrict, and they did a really good job. Achieved had some exquisite nades. Like, those roams were they just sucked on MIBR's side. The only way in which MIBR won rounds was off of, the first one was off of a Lukid 4K vaulting as Kaid from rafters and stopping a garage approach directly in its tracks. So an individual play and not a team play. And then one round off of just picking off every individual op on a TSM attacking execute as it went. So it was kind of like capitalizing on TSM's mistake of not being able to refrag. MIBR's aggressive nature simply came back to bite them in the ass big time for this one.
That's kind of disappointing, because I do have a lot of faith for MIBR to actually get top 4 in this group. But it is,
they can do it,
yeah, it is nice to see like a strong win from TSM, punishing that aggression, and that playstyle that we expect from MIBR. MIBR, I think, do more or less fit that stereotypical LATAM playstyle, which is, pretty aggro, pretty frag heavy. It's kind of funny that they didn't ban an attacking operator. Once again, we were watching Mkers Parabellum, and so then we moved over to that stream to catch the end of MIBR TSM, and saw that there was no attacking ban. And it's funny because Mkers actually don't ban operators during the Italian league. So when you go back and look at their stats, like for VOD review purposes, to try to like dig up dirt to catch them, that's something we talked about. Yeah, like what ops do they ban? When they play the Italian league, at the very least, they don't ban anything. So kind of an interesting parallel. I think Mkers were doing it to save strats. Gonna go ahead and bet MIBR weren't trying to save strats there. Don't know really what the thought process is behind it, but probably different, different motivations for not banning operators between the two. I can only theorize.
I'm going to hope that it just comes down to them simply not being attentive at their computers and they just kind of let the ban phase roll. I don't know if it's because they selected no ban. Actually, this might be worth going back on the VOD. If I go back, if they just let the timer run out, or if the timer very quickly goes to no ban, then this will kind of answer the question. I won't pull it up on stream for a minute. There's nothing on my feed, but I will just go back and scope through it real quick just to check.
Yeah, if it does run out of time, that doesn't necessarily mean they ran out of time. They could have just purposefully not selected anybody. Like, usually, at least when you're discussing it as a team, you'll like click something in that you're feeling.
It completely ran out.
Okay.
They didn't select it, it just ran out.
So that probably means they messed up. It could still be strategic, but there's almost no way that you plan on using at least ban something dumb that you're not going to use, right?
Yeah.
For MIBR.
Take something off the... Wait, no, I checked again. They selected no ban. They chose it.
Huh. That's wild. I just don't get that. I feel like there has to be something, even if it's just something crazy. Like, we're not going to play Ying. We don't think they're going to play Ying. But we like every other operator. Maybe we'll take out the Ying, right? That's just like... I can't imagine that MIBR had a potential play for every single attacking op, and they were like, yeah, maybe we're an advantage if we ban nothing. I don't get that thought process. Whatever.
I see chat apparently Reduct is saying that it was intentional.
Okay.
And they also did need to. I remember they did have to do a technical rehost because I think they had sides wrong. But they just decided that they weren't going to ban anything. Okay, if we're genuinely about to start a no ban meta, I am very confused, but I will let it slide this time. I don't know what this means.
I don't know. I think it's probably not that big of a deal anyways. Like if they had just banned something that nobody was going to play anyways, then like maybe it didn't matter.
I would have been calling this tactical genius, and we would have been analyzing that VOD for hours if they had won, but they only won 2 rounds, so fuck it, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, it is what it is. I don't understand it, but clearly there's a thought process behind it, so... Maybe we'll see it again. That's what I'm looking for. If that repeats, that'll be interesting.
We'll let it slide this time. All right, what'd you get? You had Parabellum's 2nd game in a row.
Yes, Parabellum Mkers. And as I said, this was better, right? Like Coastline against Oxygen, Oregon against Oxygen was Parabellum swinging everything. They didn't do that. They once again started on defense, and it was a bit better this time around. I do think that like whereas Oxygen sort of just went for default pushes that worked, Mkers struggled more in their pushes, right? I think that they were pretty slow in the majority of their majority of their takes. Aside from a rush, which did work, that was on the kitchen bomb site where they called that the Pulse wasn't watching for it. They made that play, worked really well, due to a lot of players being off site.
Nice.
I think that Parabellum's mental got a little shook in this first half, right? They went 3-3 on the split and then lost out completely attacking. But there were some rounds where just like one bad thing would go wrong and mentally the whole team seemed to fall apart. There was a team kill in prep phase, and somebody in my chat told me that the same team kill happened in Challenger League. Tell me if this is correct. They were playing on Villa, defending AVG. The guy was like making sightlines from the games room into Aviator, and he shot his teammate. Did that happen also in Challenger League?
I believe, yes. A team kill on Parabellum's side did occur. I wasn't sure if it was also Villa, but I do remember it happening.
Wow.
I'm actually hearing it. Ferme's mentioning it. So
I
buy Ferme. If you want to hot mic yourself, do you remember that game? Were you producing it or?
I think it was Penguin on a sonar too.
Like I'm not exactly sure.
Oh, you?
I remember there was a round where Parabellum like TK'd, like distinctly remember because in our production booth we were like, what? They're going to attack.
Just like we're stunned. We're going. We don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, and it's. I don't know. I think it's more, like, fine, you team kill your opponent, shotgun him in the face while you're making rotate holds, whatever. But, like, they were holding on AVG in a 4v5 without a mute. That's still pretty, like, viable, you know? That's not a thrown round right off the bat. But I think because of their mental, they kind of did throw it right off the bat, which is disappointing to me because, like, I feel like those rounds where, like, you could clutch it out, you could make it if you're just strong enough and if you're in that game mentally. Sure. Those are rounds that Parabellum give up a little bit too easily, in my mind. That's something that I think we noticed. On their defenses, they did have a good couple of clutches. Spirits got a clutch, a 1v1 on their first round, and Sonar got a 1v1 on the second round. A little bit of an issue that 2 of their 3 rounds that they won came from 1v1s, but they were both like heavily advantaged 1v1s, I would say. 1v1s that they deserved to win.
Yeah.
So, you know, not too big to deal into. And then for the defensive side for Mkers, some interesting plays. I think they struggled with a few basic things on Parabellum. They couldn't open a wall despite having a Thatcher and Selma and 3 Selmas alive. It was it was Trophy Bomb site. They were opening from Master, and through the use of Electroclaw tricks and Impact tricks, 3 EMPs and 3 Selmas all got denied, and they never opened even a single sightline into the Master wall. So that was crazy. There were a couple other times. The very final round was played really poorly. They were in a 3v1, I believe. 2v1 for the majority of it. 3v1's only for a brief moment, and Sasha clutched that out. Really nice play by the smoke. Interesting decision to like stick the plant. There was like 25 seconds on the plant in the 1v1, and whoever it was on Parabellum just like stuck it.
He didn't pull off it?
No, and
with
he
that,
very
with
clearly
that much
should
time
have.
left? Man, okay.
Yeah, there's 25 or so seconds. So I definitely think there were like a good amount of just like basic poor decisions from Parabellum. Mkers on their half, they played okay. You know, I think there's a little bit worry that maybe Mkers are this just like huge upset potential team that are going to destroy the tournament and nobody expects it. And maybe on the A stream that seemed to be the case. I'd say on the B stream, Mkers overall looked okay. They looked fine. You know, better than Parabellum for sure. Not good enough to get top 4 in this group. Maybe that'll change with the final game that you guys watched on the A stream. But I don't think Mkers played anything exceptional in these 2 games. Okay. And yeah, I guess that's my analysis.
Not necessarily if you had to answer this yet off of just one game, but if you had to figure out what their playstyle was, where they fit in, are they very much an EU T3 team, or do they do something different? Like, there's a reason they beat 5 EUL teams to make it to this stage in the first place. Like, I'm still trying to figure out what their playstyle is at this point, other than playing more aggressive than I think most teams in Europe tend to do. That's probably the only real difference I see.
I don't even know if they were that much more aggressive. I think they were a little bit slow, particularly in this first game against Parabellum. In their second game, Aqui really started to pick it up. Aqui definitely was like fragging really hard in that second game. I didn't notice anybody having great individual performances against Parabellum. There were like some big mistakes from them as well that I didn't actually touch on. Like they had to attack onto the kitchen bomb site twice, right? And the first time there was nobody roaming at all from Parabellum. Or maybe wait, this was no, I'm skipping ahead a game actually. They were both Villa games and they were both Mkers games. Right, so maybe I'll save this one. But yeah, I do think that Mkers made some basic mistakes, and so I don't think that they're the super team. Yeah, I'd say that they're a little bit slow. They can frag pretty well, and they have perhaps some creative holds, but nothing like super standout about them.
Sounds good. I do want to get more of an answer to that question as the group stage goes on, and then we'll have more of that against in the TSM game that happened at the very end on the A stream, but that will come in just a hot second. For this part, TSM still had another game to play before they met Mkers, and that was SSG. So the second time that we saw Coastline, this was kind of surprising. I thought Space Station had lost us in ban phase. Like, really? Pure honesty. I thought that this wasn't going to be worthwhile simply because TSM is a team of gunners. We see this in the NAL all the time. This matchup, when we played in the North American League, was not on Coast. I'm trying to remember where it was. Off the top of my head, I can't remember where these guys played. Was it Chalet? That sounds right, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, so yeah, it's definitely Chalet.
Both of them are aggressive maps. Both of them seem to swing more attacker-sided. In this case, this was defense all the way. 4-2 with SSG starting on defense, and then 5 unanswered rounds all the way for TSM to pull things back from a 4-2 half and win 7-4. Not a good skid. I think part of this had to do with SSG deciding that they were going to stick Canadian on a Ying for 2 consecutive rounds. Both of them were Candela executes that went absolutely nowhere. They were trying to force entry. They were looking for some space, and they simply couldn't find the space. This was the Bolo v Rampy show, and I don't necessarily even mean that from the number of kills that they were getting. I also mean that from the kills themselves. There is one, I'm going to go back and find it, where Boldo perfectly peeks somebody on blacktop from kitchen, wall bangs him. I'm going to assume it's yellow ping, but he zoned the fucker. It was so good.
Really?
That entire game was honestly a highlight reel. It was from Bolo and Gio and Chala on TSM side, and then Rampy and Bosco were the 2 who were cleaning up, because Bosco, for his own part, had a really good SMG 11 clutch from Couchwall looking all the way to Cool Vibes. It was very back and forth. I didn't really want this one to end. I kind of thought this is the game of the day in my head, solely because it had all of the good things that the North American League has brought to competition. These guys are very comfortable on land. They know each other very well. Seeing Troy come back, he was doing what he was doing before. He played a lot of that hard anchor on Maestro and then could flex around, but he did play most of his rounds on Ying. So the stat does, it is a little bit weird if you look at it on the page right here, but this obviously wasn't Canadian's finest game of the day. He apparently hasn't been playing the game too much. It was like on very short notice that he came back, because Luke was expected to play. Still, overall for him, I didn't think it was too shabby. Going 5 and 10 in an anchor role does demonstrate that he's kind of coming back, and that is where he sat, but still he wasn't able to hold down the fort enough because it's coastline, and you're trying to anchor on coast. Sometimes it just doesn't work out.
Right, yeah. I think just based on scoreline, this game looks about how I'd expect it to go, right? SSG putting up like a decent fight, but TSM being the stronger team overall. The Ying play is like very standard for Space Station these days. That's like what they kind of brought to the table for the NAL last
They
stages.
like it.
They do
like
love their Ying. Canadian on it maybe is a little bit of a surprise because he wasn't even on that team when they started bringing Ying more and more. But he's adapting in with the squad. The biggest thing for me there is faults. You say TSM
Very
versus
low.
Space Station on Coastline is like a favors TSM because they gun better. Well, okay. Maybe if Faults is putting up like results like that, but I think Space Station hangs with TSM in terms of gunplay. If Faults and Rampy are like showing up the way they have been inside of the NAL, that's a very worrying performance for me from Faults. I'm sure it's one best of one. I'm sure his rest of his tournament's going to go a lot better, but I don't know. I think that this is a map that they have a much better chance and possibly do win if Faults is popping off, because that stat line for me really makes me worry. When you're going to a frag heavy map, you can't have your Ash main going 2-11.
Yep, that's true. Here's the club.
Pardon? Hello, Jacob? Are you gone? I think he might be gone. His internet seems to have died. That means that we're still live here, Twitch chat. So we can move on because it was gonna be my game next anyways. So I'm going to hope that Jacob gets back here at some point, and we're going to talk about the next matchup, which was Mkers taking on NIP. And this was one where I think NIP were the favorites to come out in it. I saw somebody in chat saying I'm sleeping on Mkers. Mkers are solid. I think that they're fine. But again, against NIP, it was always going to be a tough game. This is one, oh God, this one had so many weird plays. I guess, first of all, NIP started on the defense. Welcome back, Jacob. You're just in time.
Everything just stuttered there for a sec, but I think we're good.
Yeah, you're just in time to hear all about NIP versus Mkers, so I'm glad that you've come back. I think on defense, NIP, they had a lot of roaming plays. They really were trying to get aggressive with those offsite positions, as you expect from NIP, right? And it worked pretty well. Mkers struggled really hard with how aggressive NIP were rocking. There was an Oryx flank that worked out. He ended up, it was, I believe, an AVG hold, and Oryx jumped up the master hatch. When there was somebody in master, he gets up, and we're watching the Oryx POV. He gets up, turns around. The guy in master's like staring at him, brings up his gun, pops him in the head. Wow. I don't know how NIP wins some of the gunfights that they win. Doesn't make any sense to me, but they had some fun plays. Aqui was sort of their biggest problem when they went for those roams. Again, he did a pretty decent job on some of those rounds, clearing out the roamers. There were a couple of times where it looked like NIP didn't really have any intel on his position and they were just dying to him, but most of the time NIP were coming out on top. There were some strange rounds, even beyond the Oryx. There was round number 5 where they defended on Kitchen and they set up above. They had all of their utility up above. And then, Mkers showed up above and nobody on NIP were actually playing there at all. So they won the round easily. They had top floor for almost 3 full minutes. Then they ran it back. And I'm thinking this is an Omega brain play, because this time NIP did play players up above. And Mkers either misdroned it or they droned it really sloppily, because they kind of assumed, it seemed like, that nobody would be up there because nobody was up there last time. And there was, and they got destroyed because they just didn't really roam, or they didn't really drone it, or they didn't drone it efficiently. That was a major head scratcher for me. It would have been very easy to just drone at the bathroom, but it didn't seem like that's what Mkers wanted to do. So, some sloppiness there coming in from Mkers, misdroning things, especially when you know that this is a roam heavy team, I think is a pretty basic issue. And then there was a big round as well on this first half where Pino got a huge 4K. This was one where, again, I think
Pino
it was
4Ks,
more or
name
less
something more iconic.
I know, yeah. If we can pull this one, I don't know. Do we have this clip?
I found the one of the Oryx hatch play on Master that you found. So
that one's more fun.
There's some that I'm scrounging through to see if I can't find it, but this is the one specifically that you were mentioning, and I think I can kind of already see it. Let's watch.
Yeah, and hopefully we get the player. Yeah, here we are. So Shasha's on drone, but he's gonna get off of it soon here. If it shows up. Yeah, so he gets off his drone. Oryx isn't looking the right way. He looks at the player and he's being stared at, like Sasha knows.
What?
Sasha still loses that gunfight and Psycho gets ahead. That's that Oryx play that was kind of funny, I thought, from Psycho, really impressive. And then Pino gets this huge 4K in round number 2. A very gun-heavy lineup. A lot of these NIP lineups were very focused on the gunplay rather than the utility. It did seem like that was one of those rounds where Mkers slowed to a halt. Another sort of common theme from them. They were trying to clear that top floor. They kind of lost one. They got the plant down in that round, but they just lost so many bodies trying to get the plant down that Pino and the rest of the team were able to clean up, win the post plant in the 2v1 post plant. So, you know, strong defensive half from NIP. They then swapped over, and in the second half, it was Mkers on defense. NIP more or less, again, tore them apart. I think that NIP, when they got gunfights that were like relatively fair, Mkers didn't stand a chance. They were just ripping them to shreds with the gunplay. I will say NIP's attacking lineups looked super off and super weird. This is a map where Nomad, Hibana are banned, right? That's 6 flashbangs banned out. It's hard to fit flashbangs into your lineup. But NIP, they ran like a round where they didn't have any flashbangs at all. They went up against like a Jaeger or Rooney. They couldn't clear anything. So they were like, okay, let's bring flashbangs. They then brought like 6 flashbangs or something and brought like almost no explosives. They only had the ash. And then like we saw Mkers bring a bunch more like, you know, bulletproof cameras and shields and everything. And so I don't know, a lot of the earlier lineups from NIP just seemed really bad in terms of the operators they were bringing. That's perhaps from a biased North American perspective, but I think they got
skewed.
better. Yeah, they got better. They got better lineups as the game went on. So I'm not going to be too critical of them. They at least adapted to that. But yeah, Mkers, I think probably just need to play behind utility a little bit more. Anytime they gave NIP a fight, they lost.
I did. We have a couple of people asking to see the end of round 10, which I don't totally understand the context for, but I did have it pulled up. Was this the other one that you were referring to?
Yeah, this is the one where Julio's gonna win a 1v1, and like Mkers literally could have just not fought this. This is just gonna be a round where Mkers could play passive, they could hide back. I think this is the one where the guy, the Mkers player is like 90. I believe it's I believe it's Scatto playing 90, and he ends up in a 1v1 right before the time runs out. It's like the final 5 seconds or so, and he takes the gunfight. I think it is like a lack of intel, because I think the player on Mkers, I think Scatto believes it's a 2v1, so he has to take a gunfight, but he knows the kit is down. We see Kamikaze's going to drop the kit right out front of the game's door. There's the kit dropped, right? Scatto sees that kit get dropped. I guess if he's stunned, perhaps he doesn't realize it's on the floor. But the rest of these site players trade out. It's going to go down to a 1v1. But since Psycho is down, I don't think Scatto realizes he's in a 2v1. There's 9 seconds. He knows exactly where Julio is, because Julio's got to go get that kit. 3 seconds. He could literally just not take that fight.
Damn.
And he said he takes it, and Julio punished him. Every time you give NIP a fight, you lose. So really just needed to be more passive play from Mkers.
Got it. Okay, so not their worst performance on the day, because they would still go on to... this was their worst performance on the day. They would go on to defeat TSM later. Maybe there might be some playstyle correlation between how they performed against TSM versus NIP, but now with 2 games straight for Mkers, both of them played on the same map, what's kind of like the observation or the pattern that you notice from one map to the next in terms of how they did?
Well, they played the same map, so I think that there are some similarities. I think, number one, they were pretty slow, particularly when they lose that opening pick. Even if it's not something that you know, is a major crucial operator, they will slow to a halt. They really do need to take some time, I think, to figure out what they want to do next when they fall into that situation. I think in terms of their gunplay, Aquio and Ash, solid player, really hits some nutty shots, can make some crazy stuff happen.
You're kind of giving people a crash course for people who don't understand Mkers. So like whatever you say, they're going to look at that and go, oh, so this is kind of like normal. We don't know, because some people just don't know what they're like.
Exactly. I think like rough overview on attack, they looked a little slow, particularly when they lose bodies early. On defense, also on attack, Aqui's kind of nuts. On defense, you know, I think that they probably should take fewer fights. I think if they just played inside of their in their bomb sites a little bit more, they would find a little bit more success. But they do like to get into gunfights on defense, and yeah, nobody sticks out on defense as like a super great fragging player that will carry the team, at least not in these first couple of games. But overall, I'd say that's more or less the playstyle I saw from Mkers.
All right, and then we'll correlate that with the TSM game a little bit later. But before we get to that one, we hop back to A-Stream, and we see the second of 2 Giants gaming matches, the second of 2 Space Station matches, and our second shutout on the day. Want you to take a second and remember that Canadian is back with this team. He hasn't been playing the game very much, but he's back on SSG, and we're also back on Clubhouse. This was where Canadian showed up. He was playing primarily soft anchor on defense, and it's a 6-0 half on defense for SSG. It didn't really seem like Giants were able to execute anything in the late game. Like early round, mid round, there was a lot of aggression. There was a lot of utility movement. They were acquiring map control, and they were moving in very quickly. But when it came down to it, there were SSG guys who were in deep roam positions who came up because there simply weren't enough angles to watch on flanks for Giants, or there were enough people who were already turtling back on the bomb site that by the time you're down to your last 20-30 seconds, Giants simply don't have a way to win. And this also did ultimately come down to 2 Troy clutches, and I do have them both pulled up because they both hit the subreddit. Both of them are very worthwhile. So the first one,
I'm excited to see these. I didn't get to watch any of this map, so I'm really excited.
The map itself would have been really good. I kind of hoped that it was a little bit more back and forth, but this was just a clinic from Space Station. So he's in a 1v2. This is this one's not as impressive because someone just decides to swing him Gen, I think. Nope. Oh, he's not looking the right way.
Nice.
So then he'll come back. He just has to win the gunfight, and he just taps. He just taps. Troy's just too good, man.
He's bad. I mean, listen, he's played the game for like 5 years. He's a 2-time world champion. 3 months is nothing.
It feels like the gunslinger is coming back for one more fight, and even though he's only been gone for like 2 months, it still feels like the longest time in the world. So let me grab the second.
I'm looking at the stat line, and after that round, he's 8-0. I want to know how he finished.
Yeah, so now we're back to round 6, and I think this was probably the one that Giants had the most potential to win. But if you look at it real quick, they've already forced out all of construction control. So Giants have moved from cache to con right onto site. Rampy is downstairs, so try to like flush up main as fast as he possibly can, but he's going to be late. So it is going to end up coming down to Canadian, and a very crucial mistake from Giants, because if you look at the silhouettes, all 3 of them have now pushed a master bedroom. They're already like around the bed itself. One of them tries to get positioned back inside bathroom.
Right.
So he's here, has a nitro. They're going for plant. Ysera pulls off because he gets TK'd. SSG comes back around. Rampy's a distraction. Canadian hits the nitro, and then the longest shotgun blast down long you've ever seen in front of Logi door. He just slams him. It's just so good. I was like, all of our watch party was freaking out over this one, and I thought it was like, it's a lot of really, really bad positioning. I thought the reason Ysera pulled off was because he didn't like the plant spot, or maybe they figured out where Space Station was coming back up, but no. Speakeasy TKs him trying to shoot Rampy. He's like, you lose your own cover, and that puts SSG up 6-0 on a defensive half. It was ridiculous.
That's tragic, because if all you have to do is not kill your planter there, I guess the C4 might have done it anyways. I don't know. I think they probably win that if they can just not kill their own guy planting the kit. That's seems like something you should be able to accomplish, but I guess not. And look at those stats, 11-1. Jesus, dude, he is
I want to say that is the highest single map rating that we are probably ever going to see.
This event? Yeah. Absolutely the highest.
2.4 where they 100% cost. Come on.
Wow. Yeah, I mean that's pretty nuts, and it's nice from a storyline perspective that it's Troy coming back and hitting that hitting that performance. But I guess in terms of Giants, like this is a feels bad for sure. You are attacking for 6 rounds onto Clubhouse, so maybe it's not quite as bad as it looks. I think that, if I can punch at my own country for a while, I think the Parabellum 7-0 is worse because they're defending on Oregon for most of that map. Giants are attacking on Clubhouse. That's a little bit harder of a job. Still, they should get more than 0 rounds. They should be able to get something, and they definitely still should have gotten some there, but at least there's a silver lining for Giants. As you've said at the top of the show, we still have yet to see Giants with the rest of APAC win a map against a non-APAC team. Maybe the next couple of days that'll become easier. Giants next game actually, they play Mkers and Parabellum. So if Giants are going to get on the board,
there's a chance there.
That's going to be when they do it. So look forward to that if you're a Giants fan.
Yeah, and one thing also about this map in particular, if we can pull the bans back up, they banned Jaeger and did absolutely nothing with it. Like, I think the only real time that they were trying to use that against SSG and make sure that they can't play it is one round where I think they got 2 nade kills, then still went on to lose said round. So even without projectile control, you still had somebody playing Wamai where it was required, and everything for them just kind of fell apart. They couldn't do anything against the return of the American Bastion SSG. So yeah, that's where we sat. Giants so far 0-2. Obviously not playing a full 3 round or a 3 best of 1 day like Group A did is a little bit different, which means you can't have like another game to see if you're going to do well or do poorly. But yeah, that's still pretty abysmal from them.
Yeah, those bans like kind of pushed me in thinking that, oh, you know, let's use the ban phase to force more of a roam strategy, right? If you're defending basement, we're gonna force them to roam. I don't know if they actually did, but I don't know if forcing SSG to run the SSG roam is the best idea with that Jaeger ban.
I wouldn't have been able to see too much of it anyway because they played 1 defensive round, and we know how that went.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
All right, you got one more.
I do. What even is this? Oregon versus MIBR. Oh, this was a fun one. This is definitely the most fun game that we watched.
I love how you just called Oxygen Oregon. Lamau, sorry. You're not even.
Oxygen,
you can't use the tired excuse this time.
I didn't. That's just
here. We're gonna watch Brazil fight the entire state of Oregon. Okay.
They'd probably win. I can't imagine there's that many good Siege players in Oregon. How big's that state? It's not that big. So. Boy. Oregon versus MIBR. Oxygen, dude. I did it again. Yeah. Oxygen, MIBR. Whatever. We started off on the first half with Oxygen being on defense. And they tried some really aggro strats. Like, they really were trying to run around and play some fun operators. Vertical brought out the Cav, and we were like, yes, let's see the Cav. She died immediately. She got droned and killed from a window. And I was watching it with Mango, analyst for Disrupt Gaming.
Yeah.
And Mango's like, you know what? If he's playing Vigil there, he doesn't get droned, then he probably stays alive. They ran that strat again, and he just ran Vigil, like you'd expect him to. So, you know, there were some fun rounds like that, but there was a ton of roaming going on from Oxygen on this map. More or less, I would say it didn't work out. On a lot of these defenses, it seemed like MIBR were, you know, taking top floor really dominantly.
That might be
Oxygen,
Kino's worst stat line ever since NAL. Wow.
Yeah, he was struggling a little bit. You can see just on those defensive operators how aggressive they took it. They played a lot of tellers. They played that 3 times out of their 6 rounds on defense. Only won it a single time, and that was because of Laxing just having a great sort of rat spot roam down in the basement, and they didn't realize that he came down there. It was a lot of, you know, I think Oxygen playing drone denial. They really did rely on not getting droned out a lot of the times and didn't seem to work out too often. They got 2 rounds on their defensive half. They swapped sides, and then they went to MIBR's defenses. And more or less, I think that MIBR looked a lot better with similar-ish holds. I think they did play a little bit better around utility. Right, there were a couple of rounds where. There were a couple of rounds where Oxygen had really bad takes. We started with round number 7, and I want to deep dive into that one. It's a garage hold. It's a roam from MIBR. They're up on the top floor. And Oxygen, again with the weird operators, they bring perma gridlock, I believe.
Round number 7, you say, huh? Let's see.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a great... Yeah, actually, it'll be a relatively fine highlight. But they don't clear out the top floor. They bring Zero and Gridlock, even though Nomad's on the board. Those are 2 operators that you typically associate with just being worse versions of Nomad, more or less. But they bring Gridlock Zero. They do have some cool, like, SAM cams. They put them in the piano floor to shoot the Electric Claws, which is great if the Electric Claws hadn't already destroyed one of their exothermic charges, meaning that they were really slow to open the wall. They also didn't roam clear. So because their exothermic charge got tricked, they were slow, and because they didn't go for a full take, they got flanked right at the end there, and they felt like they didn't have anything going for them. So overall, it was like a really rough attack for Oxygen. Beyond that, they were doing a better job. They attacked onto CEO. This is the first time, I believe, that we've seen a US team play against CEO in like close
genuinely
to a year, like 6
don't
months
know.
or so.
Yeah, we didn't see it at all for stage 1.
Yeah, last year we saw it, I think, once or so, but, like, it's been a long time since North America has played CEO.
All right, what round was that? Let's go to that.
There were 2 rounds, round number 8. It's not really a highlight round, to be honest with you. It's kind of, Like Auction got a bunch of early picks. We missed a lot of them on stream as far as I can remember. But Auction cleared out admin. They took it. This bomb site was bad. Round number 11, MIBR, for their credit, did win the game on CEO. They played it with a clash. This might be a round that you want to get a clip from, because
I'm going for it now. Yeah, let's see. Round number 11.
It was the same sort of admin take from Auction Esports, but this time they had to go up against a clash, and they never really had a good way to deal with it. They also struggled clearing out Projector.
I got it for me.
Okay, great. So this is like the clash round, right? Redux here, and first of all, Lukid's gonna play really poorly. Standing in front of the clash. Don't stand in front of your clash, kids. Stand behind your clash. Thus, you will have an invincible shield in front of you. And so, like, this will go down, and Auction will get the early picks to get the advantage in this round. They'll kill Lukid, they'll kill a few more, but then as things go on, they just don't manage to get behind Redux at all. They come from Spiral, and they come from admin. And
Lukid's the player that's standing in front of him, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Lukid's just gonna die because he's standing in front of his clash rather than behind him. As this round goes on, like, they just can't deal with the clash with the entirety of the end of it. And I believe it's Falls who hides in Projector, and they just run in Projector. He gets a kill. There should be a second player running in to try to refrag him. There's not. So he just sits there and continues to kill people over by Long Desk. This gets opened. This reinforcement from Projector to Long Desk, it gets open, and Falls plays an angle because he's super aggressive in Projector. He's like on the wall that goes to where, you know, we see the Jackal right now, the top view of the stairs. Yeah, like, get behind your clash. And so, like, we see like a pretty poor take of the clash, never putting pressure in behind it. So, like, this was one successive round for MIBR, but you can see the advantage still goes to Auction Esports. Like, they still have the advantage for the majority of this. If they can just deal with the clash a little bit better, you know, maybe Kino stays alive.
You say they have the majority, the clash is still there. Even if it's man count up, that's still a problem.
Yeah, I mean, like, this was a clash round. This wasn't a CEO round, right?
True.
So, like, overall, I don't think that this was super conclusive, but ultimately we did see North America fall to the CEO take once, or hold once, and win against the CEO hold once. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And
despite
like,
literally not playing it for such a long time.
Yeah, I mean, like, North America believes that this bomb site is garbage, which is why nobody plays it. So, like, if NA shows up to SI and they dumpster, like, any CEO holds, I think that's proof that it is garbage, and North America's kind of right. If all these other regions play CEO against North America, this is the play from Falls. Like, you need to trade that Fox, and Fox just doesn't come in and trade it, and he still pops off. And so, like, if North America comes in and just keeps losing holds, losing pushes against CEO, then, like, maybe that's a sign that North America has no idea how the meta works and needs to rethink their strats. But
and all of a sudden we're working for the wrong league because everyone else has it figured out and we don't. That'd be a problem.
Yeah, but that's a CEO hold for the North American fans that have never seen one before. And yeah, there were some good flanks, I think, from Raps. Really cool play in round number 10. To save a really bad round that Auction absolutely should have won, but Raps just rotates up Spiral, kills the planter, and goes down yellow to kill the planter. So yeah, there were some good rounds from Auction, but MIBR played better, and they really did counter the aggressive holds that Auction were going for.
All right, so on the day then, because you were the one who looked at both OXG games, how'd they look? Like the same team relatively that we saw that was first place overall in stage 1 of the North American League, or did they kind of seem like overall for a team that we kind of had high expectations for?
Against Parabellum, they just looked like a general team that held angles. Like, there was nothing to really read into there. They didn't throw against Parabellum, so credit to them there. Against MIBR, they really, like, it felt like they had a bunch of cool stuff prepped for SI. They brought a bunch of it out against MIBR. They were like, wow, look at all this crazy stuff that we've prepped that you're not going to expect. And it just kind of failed the majority of the time. Like, I think a lot of the kind of the surprise plays that they prepped were pretty bad. So overall, you know, not fantastic against MIBR, but I think if we see Auction go back to playing sort of their normal style, they play some maps other than Consulate, and they can sort of get this game out of the system, I think they still look pretty good. But yeah, I think they got too creative on Consulate with a lot of the stuff they were trying.
I saw this over on the B stream while we were watching the TSM game, and I was thinking that this was probably a really risky pick. Oh, no, sorry. Well, I was watching the Giants game, thinking that going to Consulate, not even just against like a Latin American team, like Brazilian teams just happen to love this map overall, but against MIBR, who did have a really, really deep Copa run playing on this map pretty consistently, and it just wasn't something that OXG, I think, overall has found that much success with. Like, I don't have much confidence in them just as a Consulate team, as a general rule, especially. Do you remember that one time during the NAL where Slash and Bio were still on the team and they forget to shoot default outside main for literally like the entire round and they just go on to lose the whole thing? I remember that in the back of my head and just keep on thinking that this team on Consulate somehow just hasn't really ever been able to mesh. I hope at some point they're able to. And if they're bringing out a whole bunch of really cool things like you mentioned, then hopefully that's not something that other teams can dive too deep into. It's like, oh, we didn't execute on this idea that we had because we lost the round. Like the whole idea we had flubbed. So hopefully they can resurrect more of those for later in the group stage or in playoffs, depending on if they ever go back to Consulate again. I just hope that it's not like their priority to go balls to the wall crazy on strats or creative ideas this early in the game, and to kind of, you know, hold back a bit and see how things play out and if they ever have to go back to cons again. So
it's kind of funny you mentioned that default cam play, because the same thing happened yesterday on the B stream between G2 and Furia, I believe. I don't remember which team. Yeah, same cam. I don't remember which team left it up. It was like a garage take, so it didn't have any impact, I don't believe, but like there was a player watching somebody outside of the piano windows for like a long time. I don't think it mattered for the push, but I noticed that happened again just yesterday. It's a common cam to leave up. I don't know why.
Shoot your cams, dude. I'm over here a hard stuck plat too, and I'm the one actively searching out cams at the beginning of every round because someone's got to do it.
Yeah.
Just outed myself as one of the worst players of all time. But anyway, we got one more game left to get through, and this one was TSM versus Mkers. The reason why most of you are probably here. I pulled like 110,000 viewers on the main stream. Our last game of the day, and it was the Italians getting the win over probably my favorite in most of this tournament. My favorite team from North America. Bans were standard. Play was standard. There were two very similar styles of aggression, I thought, and I mean aggression simply in gunfights. TSM, we know them as a very gun-heavy team, but Mkers were bringing it and swinging things that you really only had the authority to swing in an online setting. They were doing it on LAN, especially on their attacks. It was very, very consistent. They were pushing for kills where TSM wasn't looking, and they were winning their ones when both of them were firing at the exact same time. So Mkers simply won more of those ones more often than not in some of those situations, on attack more especially. And I noticed that they stayed super calm under pressure with very little time left. And something I did want to mention, if I can go back and find this clip, if the VOD has already been posted, it has. So it just comes down to this final execute overall for Mkers. Their TSM is on defense. It's 4-6 match point. They are downstairs in church, and this had a lot of people really, really talking about it, just because Mkers are doing a very methodical sweep of the whole thing. I think they keep most of their players alive this entire time. Scatto is their support player, who at this point doesn't have a single kill and has been doing really well just from a support level, staying in the back line. He's not getting aggressive because he doesn't need to, because Gemini and Aqui both at this point are sitting on 11 frags. And the execute, at like Reddit is calling it beautiful. I kind of watched it with half an ear because we were getting prepped for this one, but I did notice that the overall execute is going to come down to these last couple of seconds here. We can skip ahead a little bit. It's like super standard. They're just opening everything up. No HP is traded on either side, and they just keep on forcing pressure. And by the time they're finally looking for this execute, they're looking for main, they're looking for kitchen hatch. We just kind of see how they full send it. And with so little time left, it's the kind of pressure that you're under in EUL that you're expected to combat, because you simply have been doing it for a lot longer. But Mkers did this with the exact same flair as a T1 team would do. So one guy down main, Scatto's just going to force pressure. I want to say he probably got one frag before this was over, so he didn't finish with a donut. He's got Aqui down with him. They're just going to force pressure inside Armory. They don't even worry about the hatch drop. You've got smoke cover. He goes in. There's one trade. Then Aqui just finds players who are sitting on drones. Like, they wanted a yokai denial and didn't get it. There's still hatch presence, and it's all up to Geo in a 1v1. They just storm back down main, plant behind smoke. They don't plant for default on the Armory bomb, and there simply isn't anything that Geo can do. That's the kind of thing that when you have have such hectic comms in that moment, you're just like, hey, we'll force straight in. Once we have the cover down, we go for the plant, and everything on TSM's side simply falls apart because they're not expecting an Ashe to bum rush AK wall. So that's it.
Wow.
Like, decision making seemed like it was very, very on point for Mkers in this game, and so was Gunskill.
Yeah, I mean, Aqui being the MVP of that round and really like cleaning up and having such a high stat line going into that doesn't surprise me. He was definitely the best player on the team from the 2 games we watched today. So we look at the stats here. Yeah, 13-8. Yeah, okay. Cool to see some of these other players popping up as well, like Gemini and Sasha. Those aren't players that that I noticed really having fantastic games in the earlier Mkers matches. So good to see them stepping up. But Aqui really looks like a serious player, and that's really exciting, that there might just be that Italian star that's rising to the top of the leaderboards in the world. And, you know, going 13-8 and winning the game against TSM, that's kind of a statement.
It's really nice to look at an entire team that we weren't like having any expectations for, either positive or negative, and seeing what is essentially probably the best day that I think they expectedly could have had. I think a 2-1 result from them was the most optimistic thing I was going to give them. I was looking at more of a 1-2, but that was, like, at the beginning of the day, I thought they'll beat Parabellum, they will lose to NIP, and they'll lose to TSM. But this was way, way, way higher. And we don't know these guys because we don't watch PG Nationals, because it's the only league that they're competing in, because they're not even in EUCL at this point. They're still working on themselves. They're establishing a presence, and they just defeated Bolo on the mainstream with 110,000 viewers. Like, that is ridiculous. Congrats to the boys. That is probably the best showing you could have had on day 1. Good freaking grief.
Yeah, really impressive stuff.
We've got some Italian fans in here too, also in chat.
Good, yeah.
Good stuff,
I think
boys. Good stuff.
Mkers are an interesting team. I don't think they'll get top 4. I think it's totally possible they'll get top 4 in this group. Relegations is, I think, any team with 2 wins you can basically ignore for relegations, like not making it to bracket. So I think they're probably fully safe from falling down into last place. But yeah, for them, I guess only 3 teams actually make it to the lower bracket from Group B, whereas 4 make it to the upper bracket. So I think it will come down to how Mkers play against the Brazilians, and potentially some of these NA teams as well. They could, you know, TSM getting bumped out of top 4 is possible, although I don't think it's likely. So we'll see. We'll see. I'm interested if Mkers can actually pull this into getting top 4, because, like, I think Group B overall is the weaker group. So you're gonna see some upset potentials, and I think teams that are kind of on the cusp, like Mkers, NIP, maybe even Giants, if they can get their act together, have a potential to make top 4, where maybe they wouldn't in the other group. So it's exciting. Yeah, they have a real shot here.
2 things. First, chat, no, Mkers are not in Challenger League yet. They won the first qualifier, which gives them a certain amount of qualifier points. I think they still have to keep on playing in those. They're not in CL just yet, unless I'm completely mistaken.
Nope,
so
you're right.
They still, because they have all of these other qualifiers left still to play, there are chances that some other teams could, like, knock them out of those positions, but they're not in it just yet. Hold your horses. Just because they won 1 qualifier does not mean that they're in quite yet. And the second thing is that this was the group that I did sort of assume was going to be Freelo for NA. Not just because there were 3 super strong teams, or at the very least 2 like known commodities in Oxygen and TSM that were going to be very strong coming from North America. Parabellum, we weren't giving a shot to. In SSG, we were kind of like, we don't know how they're going to do with Troy coming back yet. But I did think that NA had the best chance overall, because it's 4 teams there, whereas one EU, 1 APAC, and 1 LATAM team all in that same group. Sorry, 2 LATAM teams. So overall, they still outnumber everyone else in that group, and Dark Zero is the only North American team that's not here. They're in Group A, and they're fighting for their lives at the moment. So my expectation going into the group was a lot more TSM, OXG are going to be very strong. NIP will do super well, and I think more upper bracket teams will do well, or more NA teams will be upper bracket by the time this entire group is over and done with. But so far, Mkers are sort of playing spoiler. I'm cautiously optimistic about their chances to make top 4 after today's performance. And everybody else, I don't know, man. I'm worried about what happens when Space Station plays Mkers in a couple of days, because that's going to be crazy.
Yeah, I think if you're an NA fan, it's not great. It's not a great first day. I think, as you mentioned, I think for a North American fan, your hope here is that you can get 3 teams in the top 4. I think that's a realistic goal.
Yeah.
Not like locked in for sure, not easy, but realistic
minimum
option
2.
Space Station.
Minimum, in my opinion.
Yeah, if you get 1 team in the top 4 in this group, like NA's screwed. Like NA's trolling on the timeline. So you hope for 3, you expect 2, 1's a disaster. And I think, like, as far as NA goes, NAL lost to MIBR, Auction lost to MIBR, which they also, NAL beat MIBR, NAL being Space Station TSM Auction, and then TSM to Mkers, which, like, that one hurts for sure. And that is your potential to not get top 4. But overall, I'd say it's a fine day from NA, right? Auction slam Parabellum, TSM slam MIBR, fine, right? I think we're way too early to say what NA's hopes and dreams are going to be like in this group stage. Come back in a week, NA could be sobbing on the floor, NA could be having a party. It's it's still kind of out to lunch.
What he means by NA is either we will be sobbing on the floor or having a party on the show. That's what he's talking about.
Yes, that is what I'm implying here. Yes, we are
running an NA centric show. Therefore, how they do in Group B is going to dictate our moods for the rest of the week. But if we have to welcome in a new world champion, I just hope that it's like a LATAM and EU grand final, so that we can get our sobs out earlier in the day, and then we can watch the grand final and be like, oh, I don't have any investment. Like we're not cheering for a region, so to speak. But there are some people that are like, it's dumb to cheer for the region, but I'm also like, screw you.
No, the grand finals, they're about to be a Mkers TSM rematch where TSM go up 2-0 in the best of 5, and then Mkers get an overtime clutch to win the whole thing.
Watch TSM be the team that makes it to the grand final through the upper bracket, and then Mkers reverse sweeps from lower.
Yeah, that's what I'm expecting.
Screw your one map.
That's pretty much how North America likes to perform at these events. So that'll be a good throw.
All right, let's do what we did yesterday then. Firme has concocted a brand new graphic for us. We're going to do predictions for Group A for tomorrow, Group A Day 2. That is a goddamn amazing picture. Okay.
Nice, dude. Jacob, what are you, 12? In that one? 9? 4?
In that picture, 1? I'm 17.
Oh. Well, late bloomer, it's okay.
Yeah. Me with that facial hair is a sight no one ever asked for, so.
Listen, I would still give you candy, Jacob. I think you're a sweet boy.
That's funny, because even at this point, I was still about 5 inches taller than you.
Man, I hate it here. I didn't show up just to get attacked like that.
Look, man, if you make laptop jokes at me, even when we're off the NAL, I'll keep on making short jokes back at you. Just own it for a day. Anyway.
All right.
We'll run through predictions real quick, because we did this with just a Liquipedia bracket yesterday, but these are all of the games in order. So, based on results from yesterday, some varying levels of confidence, let's get into these. Let's keep to 1 sentence or less. We'll just blow through them real quick. 16 games, or 16 games? Am I crazy,
7.
or do we only have 15?
Yeah, it shouldn't be an even number, right?
I swear it's
unless
not.
It is an even number tomorrow.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. It's 15. Okay, one of these in here is duplicated. Chat, find the duplicate.
Dark Zero Liquid. Last 2.
Yeah.
Yep. 14 and 16.
If Firme just kills number 16, we're good.
Yeah. That's okay.
We don't need it again. Hey, there we go. All right, sweet. All right, BDS G2. This is an EUL rematch. It's not super exciting on paper, ultimately. It's exciting from a storyline point of view, and BDS just looks a little bit hotter. I'm not even using the fact that G2 are 0-3 for this one. I just think BDS looks better. I think they take it.
Yeah, I wasn't very confident on G2 coming into this tournament. They threw a bunch of games on day 1. I take BDS.
All right. Wait for it. Let's see how fast he can input these.
Yeah, I feel like this is not an easy task. All right, there you go.
All right, cool. Yeah. Dark Zero Empire. The Russian machine has come to play, but I think Empire and Dark Zero are both somewhat methodical teams overall. So I'll go with I think what the underdog pick is here. I think DZ could potentially counter-strat Empire. I think they take it here.
Oh, this is a hard one, Jacob. You give me a difficult task. I'm gonna go Empire. I think I was much more impressed with them from compared to Dark Zero.
I love how I said Dark Zero and it gave me Empire, man.
You're picking Empire whether you like it or not, Jacob. You agree with me? Okay.
Don't give me any of that.
Fair enough.
All right, CAG G2, you go first.
I think this is the upset. I think this is where CAG start to come back. I think G2 probably is the better team, but I think G2's tilt will be the death of them. CAG, take this.
You're not trolling.
No, I think G2 is like potentially getting last in this group. Definitely bottom 3. I think CAG potentially pull out this win.
Wasn't expecting that. I'm going to take G2 simply because I think they're the better team on paper, though I will acknowledge that their mental is considerably chalked in this game. Okay. I
think G2's mental is pretty bad. CAG's mental, I think, is also pretty bad. But I think CAG will tilt G2 before G2 will tilt CAG.
And I think you might... are you playing the long game? Because we're both kind of assuming BDS is going to beat G2, therefore their mental's already going to be in the gutters, so when they play CAG, it's going to be even worse.
I mean, when G2 played their first game against One, they didn't need any prior games to destroy their own mental game. So no, I don't even think that matters. I think G2 are flushed regardless.
All right. Let's put this. Let's at our 6 events on this part of the podcast, and we'll see what happens tomorrow. Cloud9 versus Empire. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Empire just looked like they're far stronger than an Asian team that only has a win against another team from Asia. So overall, unless Cloud9 shows me something, this should be a Russian win.
Yep. I had Empire, like I made these predictions earlier, and I had Empire losing a bunch of games, but I'm going to go ahead and change that. I think Empire will take this one, and they should beat out Cloud9.
All right. Yeah, it would have been way different if C9 had a better performance yesterday, but overall, I think this one's kind of safe. CAG Liquid, obviously, this is a Team Liquid dub. It's the best team that I had coming from Latin America. They had a 2-1 showing yesterday, only with a couple of mistakes. They lost to Empire, but if they can clean up some of those things that they had against, who did they play? Liquid played
Cloud9.
The Cloud9 one was a little bit more of a problem because they had a big skid when it shifted halves. It was 6-0, and they still let Cloud9 win 4 in a row. So if they shore up some of those mistakes, I think they definitely take this one.
Yeah, Liquid are still a very good team in my mind, and CAG probably don't get this win. Sorry.
Yep, your confidence in them only extends as far as G2's tilt. I see through it.
Like I'm not that confident in CAG. I'm just kind of not willing to put any bets on G2. It's more so where I'm thinking.
That's fair. Cloud9 FaZe. This is cool because I think this is the first time we've ever seen Cloud9 versus FaZe anywhere, even at DreamHacks. I think. I could be wrong. Point is, we don't see this matchup very often of these two brands, the red and the blue, and I think the red takes this because overall, FaZe had a very solid day yesterday, especially knocking G2 into the gutter. So Cloud9, show me something, lads, because yesterday was abysmal enough for me to not pick you anywhere in this bracket for today.
Yep, I'm not super confident in what I've seen from Cloud9, and I think going into this FaZe Clan, we're one of the top picks to make it out of this group, so I gotta go FaZe Clan. I think that's the smart pick.
Furia, Liquid, 2 BR6 teams. You go first.
Probably Liquid, right? Well,
it's kind of tough.
Do I dare change? Liquid versus Furia? Yeah, I'll go Liquid. I think Furia actually have like pretty okay chance at this, but Liquid are the better team. They're more consistent. They're the safer pick.
Yeah, I think Liquid being safer ultimately is better here, just because if Furia were going to win a game, it's not going to be against the team that's like at the very top of LATAM from just an overall confidence point of view. I do think versus One later down the card they have a chance, but against the bastion of LATAM, it's not today.
Yep.
Next up, BDS FaZe. I'm torn on this. Because ultimately, FaZe, even with their roster lineup, moves and everything, and their performance at Copa, I like overall. But I simply think that BDS can play either aggressive or structured. They can play Smash Mouth or they can hang back. And FaZe, even though we kind of know what the LATAM play style has kind of shifted into over the past couple of months, ultimately probably won't be able to stand up against them. In a best of one format, I will take BDS here.
This is, I think this is my game of the day. I know that's not something we're doing, but this looks like the best game of the day for me.
On paper, I agree, yes.
Fortunately, it's gonna be on your stream, so I'm not gonna get to watch it live. That's sad. I'm gonna pick BDS to clutch that one out. I think that, yeah, I think BDS is the better team. I think BDS is the best team in this group. I'm probably gonna pick them for all their games.
Yep, I kind of agree. Furia Cloud9. You want to take what should be the obvious nail in the coffin?
Yeah, I like Furia in this one. I think Cloud9 aren't gonna win. I'm gonna pick Furia. Put it that.
Yeah, I don't really have much confidence in them either. But if they were going to have a performance against another Latin American team similar to Liquid, then maybe against Furia is where they kind of bring it out. Not the case in this one. If it's going to swing anywhere, it would be here, but Furia can luck it out pretty easily. One versus BDS, again, kind of the same story. It's not that I think that BDS is just going to sweep the entirety of LATAM, but I do think they sweep the entirety of today, and they should knock out one.
I think BDS sweep the entirety of LATAM. I think BDS take this one too.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh,
I like BDS.
I like him too, but for far more obvious reasons.
All right. What do you think of this next one? Empire G2 though.
I love the matchup because Empire back on LAN is just a sight to behold by comparison to this matchup if it was in the EUL. And G2, are we really going to pick them to win like none of their games today?
Yeah.
No, you aren't going to pick them to win any of their games today if you end up going with the Empire pick. But let's just assume that the hot streak continues and Empire just can't be stopped even by the team that they lost to at the Invitational 2 years ago. So let's give it to the Russians.
They may have lost to G2 at the Invitational, but they did win against G2 in the EUL, which is more recent and a best of one.
True.
And Empire looked better recently, and G2 have been throwing these games. So yeah, Empire.
Pretty strong, like, failure streak from G2. I finally get back on my train of being able to trash G2 like I did all the way back at the beginning of 2020. That's about to be fun.
We're
Zero
very
finally.
Consistent.
I think we are. But
except for 2 and 3, we picked the same teams.
Dark Zero 1, I'll go a little bit against the grain here and say Alamau had a good enough day yesterday to justify probably beating DZ. If the whole solution is getting aggressive where DZ don't expect it, then they need to find a way to shore up their middle ground and make sure they don't get like gut punched until they die. And I think Team 1 could definitely do that.
Notice this, chat. I will remind Jacob of how close we are and how even we are, baiting him into a bad pick. I now pick Dark Zero, and we'll take the lead in predictions with that, hopefully, by tomorrow.
Okay, that's another R6 events moment for sure. CAG versus FaZe. I'm just going to say FaZe and leave it there.
Yeah, FaZe are the better team in that matchup. I'll take them here.
DZ Liquid. Damn it. Liquid, I think, ultimately is the safer pick, but both of them at this point will be like neck and neck from a standings point of view. So it's kind of it's a 50-50 coin flip that I think is just going to land on the side of the horses. Sorry.
That is really tough. Maybe this is game of the day. Sorry, BDS FaZe. I don't know. I didn't realize this game was also happening.
They're both
today.
super good. Yeah.
Right? What? Initially, I had picked PDS. No. Wait a minute.
Wait
a minute. That's his meme.
BDS takes it as now shifted license over to Jesse. Okay.
Thank you. I bought it for 5 prediction points. God, I don't know. I think I'll go Liquid then. I just wasn't in love with the way that I saw Dark Zero playing back in day 1. And Liquid, I didn't watch day 1, so that gives me more hope in them.
You just have to make sure we represent DZ every step of the way. Oh, no, wait, hold on. You've only picked them to win once. Traitorous NAL analyst actually going with your gut. Final game of the day. This is weird. Furia kind of surprised me yesterday. 1 kind of surprised me. I don't want to call it a coin flip, but Fantasy and Rare seem like they're a wonderful double combo as much as Alamau has really impressed me, so I'll take Furia. But it is a toss-up.
Yeah, I think both of these teams slammed G2, right? And very not slammed. That's probably unfair. Both these teams beat out G2 in overtime on the first day. And I'm remembering back to those games. I think Furia looked better beating G2 than Team 1 did. So that puts my faith into Furia. Using G2 as like a measuring stick here, I think Furia played a little bit better. I think I'll take them in this game as well. But yeah, these are 2 teams that I don't know a whole lot about. So we'll go Furia with a little bit of an asterisk that I'm not too confident on that one.
Yeah, for some of these, I'm also not factoring in like previous like stage 1 results for these guys, whether it be EUL or it be BR6. I know that I'm not looking at them from the perspective of most recent history. When it comes to regional matchups, you obviously can look at it and think, oh, maybe the last game that they played against one another is going to factor into how they do on land. But then again, slightly different environment, and you are riding a momentum streak from earlier in the day as well. So both Fury and One are going to have 2 games played prior to this matchup tomorrow night. And when we finally get to that stage, like mental game and fatigue does not factor into this. It's just a mental thing, how your previous games went, how confident you end up feeling. And BDS ultimately will win the 6th Invitational 2021.
Damn.
that was so fast for a minute. What the fuck?
There they go. How many points would that be? That's 15 times 2, so that's 30 points. That would put them first in the group. If they won, well, I guess they'd only win 15. They don't get 2 points each. That's 15 points. That still puts them first in the group. If they win all 15 of these games, that should secure first.
Especially against themselves. We found a way to clone a Lems, and it's just BDS versus 5 versions of a Lems. That's going to be fun to watch. Can't wait
that'll
for
be
that.
very good. Yeah. Then it might be fair to say Shaiko's cheating. And maybe they got a point.
Yeah, maybe that's true. All right. Q&A time. If there's anything that you wanted to ask us from earlier in the day that you weren't able to do from before, anything that you want to ask us now, we got a couple of minutes. Obviously, this show is considerably shorter than yesterday's by a little bit, but we won't go on for too long. Go crazy. See what we got.
Somebody said, how do you feel about the Mirage roster announcement? I don't think they announced anything. Oh. They teased something 30 minutes ago. Don't really know what it means. Oh, they said 7 p.m. Were you quoting them when you went because that's what they tweeted.
Interesting.
That's fun. I will say
they're doing the cards again, which is really cool for their branding on their Twitter. That's always been really dope.
Yeah, I think like obviously it was kind of leaked for some people, but whatever. I think revealing your roster one by one, especially when it is like a full 5-man reveal every single day, is a really hype way to reveal a roster. I wish more teams did that, because back when it was first being announced, I would like check Mirage's Twitter every single day, and I thought that was a really fun way to announce a roster. So yeah, really excited for when they announced that they've picked me up. I mean, what?
You being a content creator for an org? Okay.
No, I'm not a content creator, dude. I am a fragger.
That's true. You're not a content creator. You should stream more.
No.
One thing I will say.
Wow, dude.
You've been doing a good job. I'm proud of you. 5 cards. That's the only thing I can really see from this. That's 5 cards turned face down over the original 6. So I'm assuming that they already kind of know that they're moving things around from 6 men to 5 men, whether that means hot and cold's going someplace, whether that means they decided they don't need courts anymore. Both of those are kind of the 2 things that I would take stabs at. But full honesty, I have no idea what's actually going to come from Mirage's side. I just have I have an inkling it's one of those 2.
We'll see. Otherwise, in terms of chat questions, do you see anything here? Hot and cold is literally on the right. Yeah, that was their old reveal. For those not aware, the cards on the bottom is what they showed before. So that's not an announcement. It's the blue cards that are new.
Yep, 100%.
Best region. North America or Brazil? What do you think?
Of the 4 at SI overall, LATAM came in looking really hot, and so far the results have shown that they are very in top contention for most teams probably to go to upper bracket of any region. So for me, it's Latin America, 100%.
Okay. I think North America plays the game better than another region. And I think North America is the best region. I think
fair play.
I think they should win this.
I have
cuter. Guz is Jesse. Guz is cuter. Guz is a gorgeous little man.
Ooh. Tough one. I gotta say you just because you're here though. Sorry. I'm not about to call you not cute to your face because that would be weird.
Yeah, that would be really weird. Especially because you say it to me every night. So then I would start to doubt that, those nightly messages.
What I say to you in private, I also have to say to you in public. That just has to. That just goes without saying.
Yeah, we got to keep it honest.
Traditional son stepdad role that you see every day. How's my day? Great. It's been going pretty good. G2 survived to top 8. Jesse doesn't think so. I think there's a likelihood that they will get out of Group B, in my opinion. But obviously, we on the desk don't necessarily agree about that.
G2's in Group A, though.
To go out of groups, CAG.
Huh? No. G2 is in Group A. That's what I'm saying. You said that they might make it out of Group B. I think if they were in Group B,
I was getting we did a Group B show, then shifted over to Group A for predictions.
Yeah.
So yeah, my bad. No, they will definitely go to top 8 or to bottom 8.
I think that makes sense. Liquid's above all NA teams. Yeah, maybe.
Liquid is? Yeah. No,
maybe.
Probably not. Not above TSM in my opinion.
I think it's up to lunch. I think they have a chance.
Yeah.
I think Liquid is definitely Brazil's best chance of winning SI.
Is there a chance SSG doesn't get top 4? I didn't have them going top 4, but that was because I didn't know if them integrating Troy into their system again was going to be met with instant success and then kind of like pick up some of where they left off before he decided to retire. I had them going bottom 4, and considering Mkers could play Spoiler, MIBR, NIP, and 2 other really strong North American teams are there, I think they will be bottom 4.
This is a question that actually was asked in my stream earlier today. Somebody asked Mango and I, and we were pretty in agreement. Is it possible that SSG get bottom 4? Yeah. Is it likely or probable? No, I think Space Station are pretty safe for top 4, but not 100%.
People in Brazil are saying NIP has hiding strategies. Do you both think that's true? I didn't watch NIP games today, aside from the Giants one, which didn't seem like they were... It didn't seem like they were hiding strats because that's coastline, and a lot of it seemed like it was very frag heavy, especially when Pino was doing Pino things. So on my side of things, I can't necessarily say. I don't think they were for coast against a team like Giants.
Yeah, I mean, we can't know what's going on inside of players' heads, but God, I hope so.
Please show us something cooler for playoffs, boys. Please.
Team 1 is going to be top 4. Gosh, where are they? They're in Group A. Maybe.
Kind of a stretch.
Probably not. I think that like they beat Cloud9. They're better than Cloud9. If you look at their games, they lost to Empire. That's fair. And then they beat G2, but I actually don't think they played better than G2 in that game. I don't think this is a top 4 team. They make it through the bottom 4, which is actually a bottom 5 in Group A. Then probably, but I don't think top 4.
How do you think today would have gone with Virtus Pro and Wildcard not getting DQ'd? I think it hurt APAC in the long run, and I would have loved to see VP play some NA teams. Virtus Pro, I think, was not quite a shoo-in for top 4 in Group B, but I think they were contenders. They were looking really exceptional. They were the best Russian team, especially as their EUL result had showcased. Especially, they were in EUL finals. Most of like the COVID era was definitely theirs by comparison to Empire's. Even though Empire did win a major, Empire was more up and down. So I think VP was definitely looking at a potential upper bracket run, which does mean that now one of the teams that would have been like 5th, 6th place or so is now about to get like a 4th place or something, that they are going to like take, in essence, a spot that Virtus Pro is kind of evacuated if they were to get upper bracket. Wildcard, I think we're definitely going to be lower bracket. I think if they had Diesel, if they were going to play with Silex after all, because Diesel is not playing with this roster currently, then I think they were going to unquestionably be the team that would have gone out in dead last or in those bottom 2 spots if we still had 2 teams getting knocked out of the group, probably along with Parabellum or Giants. But they, with Diesel, were looking considerably stronger and probably had a chance to make at least a small lower bracket run, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think with Diesel, they contest for top 4 in this group. I think without Diesel, they're definitely bottom 2 and getting eliminated. Virtus Pro, I agree with you. I think they contest for top 4, and they probably finish somewhere around 3rd to 6th, somewhere in that area. And I think VP actually would have had potential to get like top 2 in that group. I think VP could have won Group B. Wouldn't have been easy. I wouldn't have bet on it, but like I think that would be a viable, like realistic situation where VP win Group B.
Favorite play of the day? Oh, hey, do I actually have an opportunity to show that Bolo blacktop kill that I couldn't because my internet decided to do a stupid? Let's see. Let me pull that clip up wherever it might be.
Well, you're doing that.
Do I have to go?
Let me answer a quick question here. How many of these upsets do I think can be contributed to the best of 1 format? I think we'd see a lot fewer upsets if we were best of 1. I think G2 would be doing a lot better if this was a best of 3 group stage. I think TSM probably wouldn't have lost to Mkers, but I didn't watch that game, so maybe that's unfair of me to say. I think that Yeah, I think we would definitely be seeing a lot fewer upsets. I don't consider Empire's games to be upsets in that sense. I think Empire would still be doing pretty well in best of threes. But I think G2 particularly would be the team that benefits the most if we actually were in best of threes. I don't think G2 throws those games against One and Furia if it's a best of three.
All right, here is that Bolo 4K from Coastline that I couldn't show from before.
Okay, yeah, I haven't seen this. This is exciting.
2 kitchen kills. He's gonna look for one cool and then watch the swing.
What? Jeez,
Yeah.
dude. Wait, can we play that again? That was like lightning fast.
It was so quick. So he's already in kitchen by this time. He grabs 2. We're focused on Merc, but he clears all of like bottom sunrise, jungle, bottom cool vibes from kitchen essentially. Or bar. Yeah, I think we're probably in bar too. Here comes.
Bolo's crazy, dude.
I'm
How do you
going
hit
to
that?
assume that's ping. He has bullet traces, but I'm like,
I don't know. I'm assuming this is a spot that they have like planned out and practiced, and like he knows if somebody is luggage, I have to shoot around this general area, and that's just something that he has practiced multiple times. And then I assume he just gets shot, and he thinks, well, I'm getting shot from this direction, probably coming from luggage. Probably have to shoot about here. I don't think that's a ping, because we'd see the ping if it popped up, right?
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm now suddenly remembering. Thank God that the pings would have shown up on the observer feed. So.
Yeah, they definitely should have, because there's pings right now on that clip.
Yep. Good grief.
Oh. All right.
That was the clip that I thought was craziest on the day. It also elicited the biggest reaction from the watch party that I was in. Everyone was going ballistic over that frag, and it will definitely be in some Jaeger himself highlight videos for Invitational as soon as it's done. So,
Yeah, I think so.
What do we got?
That might be it. I don't know if chat has any more good questions here.
Give us something better, boys, or we'll just call the episode early. Up to you though.
I'll give a quick screen over here. Do you think the L-shaped desks have any impact on the play? That's like a summary of a pretty long question somebody typed in there.
The fact that in groups they're all like shoved into corners.
Well, just like you can't really look over to your players, to your teammates' screen necessarily.
True.
I don't think it's that big of a deal.
It really only affects the 2 people that are like on the crux of the yell. I wouldn't call it a
Right.
massive issue. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially since there are also some setups in like team houses, especially in NA, where it's not all 5 players against the same wall. Like being able to look isn't really a thing that they can do. Because I think in TSM's house, it's like 2 against one wall, 3 against another, if I'm not mistaken, based on their like recent house tour. So I don't think it's super crazy, no.
Yeah.
Who is the most surprising team in both negative and positive performance? Ooh.
That's a fun one. I think overall, Group A was way more surprising than Group B.
Yeah. Can we get the standings back up for me real quick so we can look at these? I mean, if we're talking individual teams, Empire simply from a previous expectations perspective, ultimately, I think kind of shoots to the top in my mind.
100%.
In terms of the most disappointing, Giants, Parabellum kind of are doing as expected. I wouldn't say anyone in Group B really isn't where they should be in terms of the bottom of the scoreboard. If we go to Group A real quick for MA and see, I need to remember which ones these are. G2 being 0-3 again is because they had 2 overtime losses and then 1 smoke by phase. So if anything, that might be the most surprising negative performance. Maybe Dark Zero. Those are the only 2 I can really think of in terms of like, oh, I didn't think these guys would be down here after like the first day, but that's just me though.
I'm gonna go out on a limb. Well, yeah, I'm gonna go out with a bit of a different direction from this. I didn't think Parabellum would be that bad. I thought Parabellum would at least be able to like go close with Mkers and get a round off Oxygen. I don't think that Parabellum would have won either of the games. I think their standing makes sense, but I think looking at the games themselves, I didn't expect Parabellum to play as poorly as they did in those matches. So I'm going to say Parabellum are my most surprising team in the downwards direction.
One thing I will also mention is Team 1 are in 4th place so far, and that incorporates a massive overtime win over G2 kind of in that as well. And them also keeping the exact same pace with Furia from a record point of view, I think is also pretty damn impressive. But time will tell if that's something that they can maintain consistency through, especially with more international games still on the docket left to play, with 6 more games that they have to worry about. But the fact that Team 1 are already kind of in top 4 conversation now, when I think I had them at the bottom of my LATAM list overall, that, for me, personally, is one that kind of came out of the woodwork that I wasn't anticipating, but I don't know if that's going to, like, continue.
I think Team 1 are actually, like, one of my top teams in LATAM, but I think in a group stage, they're going to get kind of slammed, because I feel like they are more of, like, a structured, slower team, in this sort of really fast-paced, like, best of one against a lot of the teams in their group. I think Team 1 are going to have a tough time, so I don't anticipate they'll stay top 4. They'll probably finish bottom 5, you know, still go into bracket. They'll go lower bracket, I expect, but we'll see.
You want to go for one more and then we can close out?
Okay, the last question of the day.
It's a big honor.
Ooh, I like this one. If both groups are merged, who gets top 4?
If it's one massive group?
If it's one massive group.
Oh, that's for the really love of God.
Because I think in general, like, Group A looks better than Group B.
Yeah.
But I don't I've got
Group B is obviously more North American centric, so there's that to take into account. What he's essentially asking us to do is rank, like, our top 4 teams overall.
Well, top 4 teams in a group stage, right? Not necessarily the best 4 teams, but pretty close to that, I would agree. I think you go if you've got something.
I think BDS will maintain a very high position and will stay in top 4 for sure. Safe bet, but their performances from yesterday obviously indicate that they can go the distance, and when they do, they still perform well, and they can also go very fast or very more slow, strategic paced, so either one of them's just kind of favors them. I think BDS will obviously win the Invitational, which meant they would have been first place in a 20-team group stage, but yeah, still.
Fair enough. I agree. I think BDS are on pace to potentially win Group A. They might lose out to Empire, but I think that BDS look like the best team in Group A at the very least. Well, look at one of the best teams. I think they're definitely a top team. I also want to throw Empire in there just because I mentioned them already. I think BDS and Empire are going to get top 2 in Group A. They already did 8-7 each other, and Empire's toughest games are out of the way. I will say that Empire, BDS are 2 picks that I would put in Group A. Empire I wouldn't put in if I hadn't seen their games from day one, but I think Empire, BDS definitely make it to my top 4.
If we had to go, like, it's not that I'm necessarily searching to find a team from a different region, because I don't think any other team from EU stacks up to those 2, and I do think teams like TSM, Liquid, NIP, most of Latin America are better than the rest of the remaining EU squads. Though I will go, like, and say that from a consistency point of view, TSM can go the distance. They have gone the distance before. Adding Shaw to this team, even though he didn't play at SI last year, should only be a boost to their performance overall. And they can go toe-to-toe with some of the best in the world, and they're going to keep on doing that over the next couple of days. Their Mkers loss notwithstanding, I think that's kind of a one-off thing, and they would be able to persevere in a 4-team group.
Yep, I agree. I think TSM will top Group B, despite their loss to Mkers. I think they would top, or not necessarily top, but I think they do top 4 in a 20-team group. It'd line up pretty nicely with Empire and BDS, and then I think Liquid would probably be my other team for getting top 4. So 3 from Group A and then 1 from Group B, I think, is probably what my top 4 in a 20-team group would be.
And that's kind of, I don't want to say it's necessarily us picking, like, safe picks, because Empire's in there and we didn't really know that they were going to shoot straight to the top of the standings when the Invitational began. So it's kind of like the best team that we had from EU, the best team from NA, the best team from LATAM, from what we had at the beginning of the Invitational before it even started, and then Empire, because they've done so well. So, because the other 3 teams have maintained a very consistent performance that is in line with our expectations before the group stage began. So, yeah. I said those
I will
four.
say, if you asked me who the top 4 teams were a week ago at SI, there would not be 2 European squads in there.
No.
I did not see any possibility of a second
Would there be
European
2
team.
LATAM teams in there or 2 NA teams in there?
There would probably, I think for group stage, there would be 2. In a 20-team group, probably 2 NA teams. Probably 2 NA in a 20-team group. But I think
you don't have
FaZe
to say
Clan,
which 2, but I think I have an idea.
NIP and Space Station. Or not NIP, dude. TSM and Space Station. I'm going to tell you the 2. I think would get top 4.
All right. Yeah, good one. The idea of a 20-team group, I have no idea how you'd execute on that. If it's literally single round robin through the whole thing. Single one round robin, 20 teams. Holy shit.
That would be a terrible format. Thank God we don't have that.
It'd be funny.
The current format
really
is definitely better.
and somehow CAG or G2 would still get dead last in your book.
Probably. Not G2 wouldn't get to. Well, I don't know.
G2, show us something tomorrow, man. Please.
I'm sure they will. I'm sure G2. I know I didn't pick them for a single game, but I do think G2 were kind of throwing in their games, and I think that'll probably stop to an extent. I guess individually, game by game, I did pick all of their opponents, but they played really tough opponents. Like they played BDS and Empire, which are the best teams in the tournament right now. We just called both of them top 4, and then I think CAG will upset them. So I think G2 will look better, and I think G2 gets some wins on day 3. But yeah.
Do you have a PO box so I can send you some BDS merch? No, but you can send the BDS merch to one of my mods and then send it to Jesse because Jesse needs some BDS merch. I already have a jersey. So.
Who says I want BDS merch, dude? I don't like Europeans.
All right, fine. I'll take it. Jeez. I'll take it. Or Ferme can have it.
I'm sorry.
I don't like Europeans. Wow.
It's NA. I'm the NA biased caster. I gotta root for North America. Latin America, I can root for them too. That's
I joined the NAL with a joke about an EU team tethered to my name, and I can't get rid of it. So that bias will simply always exist because my brand relies upon it.
I suppose.
Like it or not. There will always be an EU tint on the NA desk, and there's nothing you can do.
Fine.
All right, well, we'll go ahead and get out of here for the day. Jesse, any last thoughts before we close up shop and get back to a really bad sleep schedule for Group A for tomorrow?
Nothing too extreme. I think the Group B went more or less as expected. North America, I do think, is underperforming how I anticipated they would. Impressed so far by TSM for sure, despite the loss. Impressed by Mkers, definitely. And yeah, Group B is shaping up to be a fun one.
I'm looking forward to what they do with 1 day of respite and hoping Parabellum and Giants can kind of make some sort of recovery. See if somebody's got something in store for Mkers as well 2 days from right now. But for Jesse and myself, we'll be back tomorrow right around the same time to go over everything that happens from Group A for tomorrow's games. Yes, again, it's at 3 a.m. for us, so we will be up bright and early watching everything and breaking it down as it comes around. Thank you, everybody, for showing up for this one. Please be sure to follow us on Twitter at CaliberJacob, at JesseJChick. And if you've got any other questions or feedback for us on this post show, please be sure to let us know there or on Reddit. If someone makes a Reddit post about these, that'd be cool. Some free karma. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a good one.